The doctor stared at the ultrasound screen longer than any normal checkup should take. His eyes darted to my wife, then back to me, and in that silence I felt something crack inside my chest. Finally, he leaned closer, lowered his voice, and whispered words I'll never forget. You need to think carefully about the life you're living. If you value your future, divorce her before it's too late. Divorce? The word burned into my mind like fire. My wife, Emily, smiled cluelessly on the bed, holding her stomach, thinking we were looking at our first child together. But the doctor's expression wasn't joy. It was fear, almost pity. I tried to shake it off, tried to believe I had misheard. But when his hand gripped my shoulder firmly before we left, I knew he meant every word. He couldn't say more, but he didn't need to. That seed of doubt was planted, and it began to poison everything I thought I knew about my marriage. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every word, every look, every little secret Emily had kept came rushing back. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something was terribly wrong. And soon, the truth I uncovered would not only shatter my heart, but force me to make a decision that changed my life forever. Before I take you deeper into this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know. When I first met Emily, I thought I had won the lottery of life. She was warm, funny, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that made everyone in the room turn their head. I wasn't the most remarkable man out there, but she chose me, and that made me feel like the luckiest person alive. Our relationship moved quickly. Within a year we were married, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging I had never experienced before. Emily became my anchor, the person I confided in when work was stressful, the one who lifted me up when life tried to push me down. People used to say we were the perfect couple, and for a while I believed it too. We built routines together. Quiet dinners at home, lazy Sundays watching movies, spontaneous road trips whenever we wanted a change of scenery. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And when Emily told me she was pregnant, I thought that was the final piece to complete our little world. I still remember the moment vividly. She walked into the kitchen holding a small white stick in her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispering, "We're going to be parents." My heart nearly exploded with joy. I wrapped her in my arms and swore I would do everything in my power to protect her and the life growing inside her. For weeks after that, I floated. I daydreamed about cradling my child, teaching them to ride a bike, cheering at school plays, and telling them stories before bed. It was the kind of future that made every struggle worth enduring. But then, little cracks began to show. Emily started guarding her phone more closely, flipping the screen down when I walked into the room. At first, I brushed it off. She said she was talking to her friends about pregnancy advice and didn't want me to feel excluded from their girl talk. It made sense, so I ignored the unease that tried to creep into my chest. Then came the sudden mood swings. She'd leave the house late at night, saying she was craving something unusual and couldn't wait until morning. Other times she claimed she needed fresh air and would go for drives that lasted hours. When I asked, she would snap at me for being controlling, telling me that just because she was pregnant didn't mean she had lost her independence. I wanted to trust her, I truly did. She was my wife, the woman I had built my entire life around. But that trust began to feel more fragile with each passing day. The breaking point, or at least the first one, came a few weeks later. Emily had scheduled a doctor's appointment without telling me. I only found out because I happened to see a reminder note in her purse. When I asked why she hadn't mentioned it, she shrugged it off and said she didn't want to bother me since I was busy with work. Still, something about her tone felt off, like she was hiding something right in front of me. I told myself not to overthink it, that maybe pregnancy was just overwhelming her in ways I couldn't understand. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and once it takes root, it grows faster than you realize. Looking back now, I realize those were the first warning signs. The signs I ignored because I loved her too much, because I wanted to believe our life was exactly as perfect as it looked from the outside. But love has a way of blinding you to the truth. and the truth was coming for me sooner than I ever could have imagined. The day of the ultrasound was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life. I had taken the morning off work, heart pounding with excitement, imagining the little flicker of life we'd soon see on the screen. Emily seemed calm, almost too calm, but I assumed it was nerves. For me, it felt like Christmas morning and my whole future wrapped into a single moment. We sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other expecting couples. Some looked nervous, others beamed with joy, and I caught myself smiling at the thought that we were finally part of that world. When the nurse called Emily's name, I squeezed her hand. She gave me a faint smile in return, but something about it felt forced, as though she were putting on a performance. Inside the exam room, the lights dimmed and the doctor rolled in the machine. Emily lay back, her shirt lifted as the cold gel spread across her stomach. I watched the screen eagerly, waiting for the little shape that would change my life. At first, everything seemed normal. The doctor moved the wand around, muttering softly to himself, adjusting the angles. Then something changed. His face stiffened. His smile faltered. He froze longer than he should have on the screen, eyes narrowing, as if he were looking at something he didn't want me to see. I leaned closer, whispering, "Is everything okay?" He hesitated before answering. Yes, everything is fine." But his voice didn't match his words. It was tight, uneasy. His eyes flicked to Emily, then to me, then back to the screen. I could feel my stomach tighten. Emily didn't notice. She was smiling, staring at the monitor, whispering to herself, "That's our baby." But the doctor's silence spoke louder than her joy. He wrapped up the exam quickly, almost too quickly, wiping away the gel and muttering that he'd send the report to our primary physician. As Emily adjusted her clothes, the doctor touched my shoulder. "Sir, may I have a quick word with you outside?" I froze. My throat went dry. Doctors don't pull husbands aside for nothing. I glanced at Emily. She looked annoyed, tapping her phone already, as if she couldn't care less what he wanted. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. The doctor's eyes locked onto mine, serious and heavy. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I can't go into details without her consent, but you need to think carefully about this marriage. For your own sake. If you value your future, I strongly suggest you consider divorce." The words slammed into me like a freight train. Divorce? From the woman carrying my child? My mind spun. I tried to press for more, but he shook his head. "I'm sorry, I've said too much already." And just like that, he walked away, leaving me drowning in confusion. I went back into the room, my face pale, my hands shaking. Emily glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. "What did he say?" she asked casually. I forced a smile. "Nothing important." She nodded, not probing further, almost relieved that I hadn't pressed her. That should have been a red flag, but love makes you cling to hope even when the evidence is staring you in the face. That night, the doctor's words echoed in my mind like a curse. Divorce her. Why? What had he seen on that screen? Was there something wrong with the baby? Or was there something deeper, something about Emily herself? I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. Maybe he meant something medical, something he couldn't say aloud. Maybe Emily was keeping a health issue from me, trying to protect me from worry. I wanted to believe that desperately. But the more I watched her, the harder it became to silence the doubts. She grew more distant after that appointment. Her phone was never out of reach, always locked with a new passcode I didn't know. She would step outside to take calls, whispering in a tone too hushed for me to hear. Sometimes, when she returned, her face was flushed, as if she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. I asked her about it once. She snapped, "You're suffocating me. Just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I owe you every detail of my life." Her words cut deeper than she realized. I wasn't asking for every detail. I was asking for honesty. For the trust a marriage is built on. But that trust was slipping piece by piece, and I was too afraid to admit it. In the weeks that followed, I found myself watching Emily more closely. Every late-night trip to the store. Every locked phone call. Every time she brushed me off when I tried to talk about the future. And always, in the back of my mind, the doctor's voice whispering like a warning I couldn't escape. Divorce her before it's too late. The more I tried to ignore my doubts, the louder they became. Emily's behavior wasn't just strange, it was calculated. She guarded her phone like it contained state secrets, never leaving it on the counter, never letting it out of her sight. At night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear the faint glow of the screen and the soft tapping of her fingers as she texted someone in the dark. One evening, when she left her phone on the bathroom counter while she showered, temptation overcame me. My hands shook as I picked it up, praying it would unlock. To my surprise, it did. She must have been too distracted to reset the passcode again. My heart raced as I opened her messages. Most were harmless, chats with friends about baby names and cravings, but then I found a string of messages from a number not saved in her contacts. The texts were vague, coded almost, but the tone was unmistakable, intimate, secretive. Last night was risky. We can't keep this up. Don't worry, he has no idea. Just trust me. I froze, my mouth dry, staring at those words as though they were knives piercing my chest. My wife, pregnant with what I thought was our child, was texting someone about nights together, about keeping me in the dark. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, to storm into the bathroom and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I slipped the phone back exactly where I found it, my body trembling as the shower shut off. I couldn't confront her, not yet. Not without knowing the full truth. Over the next week, I became a man obsessed. While Emily thought I was buried in work, I was really digging through every piece of her digital life I could access. I checked her social media, scrolling through every post, every photo, every comment. She hadn't posted much recently, which was unusual for her. Emily loved attention. But in her tagged photos, I noticed something odd. A few friends had tagged her in places she hadn't told me she was going. A dinner here, a gathering there, always with vague captions like "so much fun tonight." When I asked her about them casually, she brushed it off. "Oh, I just stopped by for a little while. Nothing important." But the more she dismissed my questions, the deeper my suspicion grew. Then there were the appointments. Emily claimed she was going to prenatal yoga, to pregnancy workshops, even to therapy sessions for expectant mothers. But when I checked the receipts in her purse or the car's mileage, things didn't add up. One time she said she had been at yoga, but the mat in the trunk of her car was still covered in dust. Another time she claimed she'd been at a clinic across town, yet the car's odometer showed she had driven much farther than that. I started writing everything down in a small notebook I kept hidden in my desk. Dates, times, excuses, the holes in her stories. It felt insane, like I was building a case against the woman I loved. But every detail added up to something far bigger than paranoia. Still, a part of me clung to hope. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me. Maybe the messages were from a worried friend, or a misunderstanding. I wanted so badly to believe that, to cling to the image of the woman I had fallen in love with. But the evidence was piling up, and the weight of it was crushing me. The turning point came one night when Emily said she was going to meet a friend for late-night dessert. I pretended to be busy with paperwork, kissed her on the cheek, and watched her drive away. 10 minutes later, I followed. I kept a few cars behind her, my heart pounding, my palms slick with sweat on the steering wheel. She drove across town, far past the cafes she usually liked, pulling into a dimly lit parking lot behind a restaurant I didn't recognize. I parked a short distance away and watched as she stepped out of the car, her face hidden under a hood. A few minutes later, another car pulled in beside hers. A man stepped out. They didn't hug, they didn't kiss, but the way they moved together, the quick glance around before walking inside side by side, told me everything I needed to know. I sat there in the dark, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I had followed her once, and already the truth was unraveling. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't imagination. Something was happening behind my back, and I was finally staring it in the face. And what I saw next, as I followed them through that restaurant door, would change everything. Inside the restaurant, I kept to the shadows, my heart racing like a drumbeat in my ears. Emily and the man sat in a corner booth, leaning close, their heads almost touching. I couldn't hear their words over the clatter of dishes and the hum of voices, but their body language said enough. She laughed in a way she hadn't laughed with me in months, light, carefree, almost glowing. For a moment, I thought I might pass out. The woman I had built my life around, the woman carrying what I thought was my child, was here with another man, and she looked happy. Too happy. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hands trembling, then slipped out before either of them could notice me. Driving home, I felt like a ghost, my chest hollow, my thoughts spinning. But still, some part of me resisted the truth. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe he was just a friend. Maybe I was losing my mind. The next day, I called the clinic and asked for a copy of Emily's ultrasound records. I told them I needed it for insurance, but the truth was I needed answers. When the envelope arrived in the mail, I opened it with shaking hands, scanning the medical terms I barely understood. And then I saw it. The estimated date of conception. The numbers didn't add up. I knew where I was, what I was doing during that time. And Emily, she had been away on a girls' trip. My stomach dropped. The baby, the child I had been dreaming of, the future I had been clinging to, might not even be mine. That was when the doctor's words came roaring back. Divorce her before it's too late. He had seen it. He had recognized something in the scan, something he couldn't say aloud in front of her. He wasn't warning me about a health risk. He was warning me about betrayal. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the papers, feeling my entire world crumble. Betrayal has a taste. It's bitter, sharp, and it lingers in your throat until you can't breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the papers in her face and demand the truth. But when Emily walked through the door that evening, humming to herself, I stayed silent. I studied her instead. The way she avoided eye contact, the way she clutched her phone even as she poured herself a glass of water. I realized I didn't know this woman anymore. Or maybe I never had. That night, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling while she slept peacefully. My chest ached with anger, but beneath it was something worse, disbelief. How could she do this to me? How could she smile at me every day, call me her husband, let me dream about our child, when all along she had been living a double life? I thought about confronting her, about forcing the truth out into the open, but I couldn't. Not yet. My rage was too raw, my hurt too deep. If I lashed out now, I would lose control. I needed to think. I needed to be smarter than her lies. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her as she kissed me on the cheek before leaving for another appointment. My hands clenched into fists as the door shut behind her. My marriage, my future, my fatherhood, all of it had been stolen from me before I even realized it. And for the first time since that ultrasound, I felt something shift inside me. No more excuses. No more hoping she would come clean. The truth was out, and it was poison. I wasn't just betrayed. I was trapped in a life that wasn't mine, raising a child that might not belong to me, bound to a woman who had played me for a fool. And that was the moment I knew. Something had to break. And if Emily thought she could control how this story ended, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. After the truth sank in, my anger transformed into something colder, sharper. Rage is messy, but revenge can be clean. I knew storming into a confrontation would only give Emily the upper hand. She'd twist the story, deny everything, maybe even make me out to be the villain. No. If she wanted to play games, then I would learn the rules and beat her at them. The first step was evidence. The photo from the restaurant wasn't enough. I needed proof that no lawyer could ignore, that no friend or family member could spin in her favor. Every time she left the house, I tracked her. Sometimes I followed at a distance. Other times, I placed a small GPS tracker in her car, hidden under the seat. Watching that little blinking that move across my phone felt like watching my life unravel in real time. More often than not, the dots stopped at places that had nothing to do with prenatal classes or doctor's appointments. Restaurants, hotels, quiet neighborhoods where she stayed parked for hours. My stomach twisted each time, but I swallowed the pain and recorded everything. Meanwhile, at home, I played the role of doting husband. I rubbed her shoulders when she complained about back pain, cooked her favorite meals when she claimed the cravings were unbearable, even held her hand when she pretended to cry about how hard pregnancy was on her emotions. She had no idea that every smile I gave her, every word of comfort, was laced with venom. At work, I quietly contacted a lawyer I trusted, a man who had handled a messy divorce for a colleague of mine. I laid everything out, my suspicions, the messages, the inconsistent timelines, even the ultrasound records. He listened, nodding slowly, then said, "If what you're telling me is true, you need to be smart. Gather everything. Once you file, there's no going back." So I did exactly that. I began a collection. Screenshots of her texts, photos of her with that man, GPS records of her late-night rendezvous, copies of the ultrasound report with dates circled in red ink. I built a case piece by piece, a fortress of truth she wouldn't be able to climb out of. But the hardest part wasn't the evidence. It was pretending, coming home each night, smiling at her, acting like I still believed her lies. She'd sit on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and ask how my day had been. I'd tell her it was fine, kiss her on the forehead, and think about the moment I would finally watch her face shatter when the truth came crashing down. There were times when I nearly broke. Once, I walked in late from work and found her whispering on the phone. She jumped, hung up quickly, and forced a laugh. "Just a friend checking in," she said. Her eyes were too wide, her voice too quick. I almost shouted at her right then, demanded to know who she was lying to me for. But I swallowed the urge, because anger wasn't my weapon anymore, patience was. The more evidence I gathered, the calmer I felt. It was like standing in the eye of a storm. Around me, lies and betrayal raged, but inside I was steady. Every secret she thought she had, I already knew. Every lie she fed me, I wrote down. And through it all, Emily remained blissfully unaware. She thought she was in control, that she could juggle me and whatever life she was living behind my back. But she never noticed how closely I watched her, how carefully I noted every excuse. She never saw the quiet fire building behind my eyes. By the time I sat across from my lawyer again, handing him a thick folder of proof, I wasn't the same man who had walked into his office weeks earlier. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't broken. I was resolved. He flipped through the papers, nodding with approval. "This," he said, "is airtight. When the time comes, she won't have a leg to stand on." I left his office that day with a plan, a dangerous calm settling over me. At home, Emily was cooking dinner, humming softly to herself, asking how my meeting had gone. I smiled, kissed her cheek, and told her it went perfectly. She laughed, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. The day I chose to strike felt like any other. Emily woke up complaining about nausea, then smiled sweetly when I brought her toast. She thought I was the same devoted husband who had been holding her hand through the pregnancy. But I wasn't her husband anymore, not in spirit. I was her judge, jury, and executioner, and she didn't even know the trial had begun. I had timed everything carefully. The lawyer had my documents ready, the bank accounts secured, and the locks prepared to be changed. Every thread of her secret life was about to be cut at once. That evening, I told Emily I had planned a small dinner at home to celebrate us. She looked surprised but pleased, maybe even guilty. She dressed up, put on makeup, and for a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. As she walked into the dining room, her smile faltered. On the table weren't candles or wine. Instead, there was a neat folder, thick with papers, and a stack of printed photographs. Her eyes darted to mine, confusion twisting into fear. "What is this?" she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ice. "This," I said, "is everything you thought I'd never find out." She reached for the folder with shaking hands, flipping through page after page. Screenshots of her messages, GPS logs of her midnight trips, photos of her and the man at restaurants and hotels. And then, at the very back, the ultrasound record with the conception date circled in red. Her face drained of color. "You," she stammered, "you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut her off. My voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of months of pain. You've been lying to me. You've been lying about the baby. About us. And you thought you'd get away with it. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were the wrong kind. Tears of someone caught, not someone sorry. She reached across the table, her voice trembling. Please, I can explain. I pulled back, shaking my head. Don't. You've had months to explain. Now it's my turn. I stood, sliding another envelope across the table. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were the divorce papers, already prepared, already filed. Her mouth fell open as she read them. I'm done, Emily, I said. You'll leave this house tonight. The accounts are already split. You'll get what you legally deserve, nothing more. And don't bother running to your lover. He'll know exactly what you are by morning. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? I smiled coldly. Every piece of evidence I've collected, I've sent copies to his email, to his family, and to every one of our friends. By now, they're already opening them. She gasped, covering her mouth, her perfect facade crumbling at last. The confident, calculating woman I thought I married was gone, replaced by someone terrified of losing the empire of lies she'd built. You can't do this, she whispered. Oh, I can, I said. And I already have. The silence that followed was suffocating. She sat there, shaking, staring at the papers as if they might disappear if she blinked hard enough. But they didn't. Nothing was going away this time. Finally, she stood, tears streaming down her cheeks. You'll regret this, she spat, her voice breaking. I shook my head slowly. No. The only regret I have is not seeing through you sooner. When the door closed behind her that night, the house felt different, emptier, yes, but lighter too. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The storm was over, and all that was left was silence and the faint satisfaction of knowing justice had been served. The woman who thought she had trapped me had been exposed, humiliated, and cast out with nothing but her lies to keep her company. She had played her hand, and I had beaten her at her own game. And as I stood there in the quiet of my home, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't end you. It frees you. When Emily walked out of my life that night, she thought she had left me broken. But in truth, she freed me. For months, I had been chained to lies, blinded by love, and weighed down by the illusion of a marriage that never really existed. Her betrayal didn't destroy me. It stripped away the mask and forced me to see reality for what it was. The days that followed were quiet. Friends called, shocked by what I had uncovered. Some couldn't believe it. Others said they had always suspected something was off. And the man she had been meeting? He never returned her calls once he received the evidence. The perfect little fantasy she had built came crashing down, and for once, I wasn't the one left in ruins. I won't lie. There were moments when the silence of the house felt heavy, when I caught myself staring at the empty side of the bed where she used to sleep. But those moments passed, and in their place came something far more powerful, clarity. I learned that trust is not blind. Love without honesty is just an illusion, and if someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I learned that survival doesn't always mean fighting loudly. It sometimes means walking away with your head held high, while the one who betrayed you drowns in their own lies. Emily lost everything she thought she controlled. And me? I walked away with my dignity, my future, and the knowledge that no matter how deep the betrayal runs, it doesn't get to define you. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have walked away silently, or confronted her in front of everyone? Do you think leaving without a word was cruel, or was it exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you think this story was shocking, wait until you hear what's coming next. Because next time, a husband's so-called business trip exposes the ultimate betrayal, and trust me, you won't see the twist coming.